Christmas and welcome to the Hourlings podcast.
Greetings and welcome to the Hourlings podcast project. My name's Martin Wilsey. I'm your host. Tonight we're talking about holidays, and it's actually really interesting. On this day in history, it is the 21st day of the 21st year of the 21st century. And we'll be publishing this episode on Christmas. So Merry Christmas. Shay's going to be driving the bus tonight. So Shay, take it away.
Yeah, all right. So this is kind of like our holiday special. If I was in a festive mood, and I suggested that we discuss, holidays and fiction. And at first I got some raised eyebrows from these guys and some squinted eyes. And I elaborated a little bit. And I said, so there's two types of holidays you can put in fiction. You can have real holidays that we celebrate around the world, such as Christmas, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, whatever. And that's there are some books that are entirely based around one holiday, right? I frequently edit a series of books, actually, from an author who just writes Christmas books, just like warm, cozy, feel-good romances based on Christmas. And they're very successful. So there's that option where you can have books that really revolve around a real holiday, or you can make up holidays and incorporate it into your world building, into your religions, into your cultural festivals for the world that you created. One of my fantasy novels began on a festival, and that was the opening chapter, and there was a lot of revelry, and it was a great way to bring a lot of color and a lot of vibrancy into that first chapter. But the chapter ended with the holiday not going quite as planned, and things not happening as they should have, which also helped to prompt some conflict. So I want to talk about both today with you guys. And I guess I'll start with, let's start with the real holidays. Have you guys, we are mainly sci-fi and fantasy writers, so I'd be surprised if you said yes, but maybe so. Have you ever written like Christmas, for example, into your book, or a holiday that we would recognize in the world? Have you ever written that into your book, and how did you use it?
I have not.
Sci-fi writer, but you could have sci-fi that's based in, America. That's still possible. So how about you, Dave?
I have not incorporated a real holiday into one of my books. That's not from any purpose or reason. It's just none of my stories have demanded it, and thus it hasn't happened.
Interesting. All right.
I never noticed the lack until you came along and pointed it out.
I know. I'm just such a troublemaker. Jeffrey, how about you?
Well, I was just realizing that my book will indeed involve Labor Day. It takes
Labor Day.
place
That's a random one.
Around Labor Day. So that, of course, will be in the book. I just need to check the timeline. I think Labor Day in 2025 is on September 1st. I'm not sure about that, but I think it is, and I'll have to rejigger.
Now, that isn't to say that the holidays that we can make up don't strongly resemble some of the holidays that we have in real life. Like, for instance, Yule, which is often celebrated today, Jeffrey, the 21st of December. A lot of holidays can go ahead.
I'm just going to say, today being not just the shortest day of the year, it is also 21/12/12. Yes. 21/12/21. A nice little numerical sequence.
I have written real holidays into my books just because I don't just write sci-fi and fantasy. So like in my contemporary YA novel, I did have Thanksgiving and Christmas in my book, which was useful as a timeline. It was useful to move along the story and to give the reader a picture of what week we're in, what month we're in. And so real holidays are actually a useful tool, in my opinion, as markers on your timeline in your story. Just throwing that out there. Okay, so I guess we don't have much to say then about real holidays. We've never written a Hallmark movie. I'm assuming we've never written a script for two people that don't like each other very much at first. But then things get cozy and some stuff changes. So I guess I'll move on to made-up holidays. Have you ever incorporated a made-up holiday into your story? And was it a religious one or a cultural one?
So I have
I will
incorporated.
say, right, right,
I have incorporated something called the Festival of the Lights in one of my stories. It was a fantasy story about an orphan living on the streets, and it allowed me to kind of contrast how free and generous everybody was during this festival in this gritty port city, when normally they were cold and uncaring about the people who lived on the streets. And so I used it for the contrast. It was more national than religious, since it also coincided in the same week as the birthday of the princess.
Oh, okay.
Very much like Japan, which has the emperor's birthday at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's just a really cool way to
Christmas
implement.
Day thing.
Sorry, Jeffrey, you keep lagging for me, so it sounds like you stop and then I talk.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to say the emperor's birthday is the end of the year in Japan, so it comes around Christmas. So the whole New Year's emperor's birthday is a big holiday thing in Japan. That's all I'm trying to say. Sorry, Shay.
No, please, sorry. No apologize.
But
technology.
In terms of my story, I was thinking back to the Twin Dilemma, which is a story we had published in one of our Hourlings anthologies. It's not a holiday that appears on the calendar, but it's a holiday insofar as a memorial service. That is a special memorial service. The Twin Dilemma is a story where you're always born with a fraternal, well, technically identical except for one chromosome, whether you have two X's or a Y. That's the only thing that's different between the twins. And they are lifelong partners. They marry together, and all of that. They spend the rest of their lives together. So if you lose one of them, that becomes a solemn ceremony. And so I have that solemn ceremony in the story to show what happens when a twin loses their life partner, in that sense.
It's a very poignant and deep sort of addition to your book. Interesting. Marty?
The closest I've ever done is a story that includes a harvest festival. It's a classic, almost cliche fantasy kind of festival, get-together, bonfire at the end of the year to celebrate a successful harvest. It's the closest I've gotten to the actual holiday.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that holidays, made-up holidays in sci-fi and fantasy, accomplish two things. I've already said it deepens your world building and your religion, if you have one, or your country, in the cases of Dave and Marty, who have more nationalistic type holidays. But number two, depending on how deep your magic system is, or how literal your religious system is, you could also wreak some havoc and have some crazy stuff happen with your holidays. And when I say like literal religions, there are some religions in fiction where there's a made-up pantheon of gods, for example, that your people worship and that maybe it's important, but sort of like our own relationship with deities in this world, there isn't like a very literal, like the clouds open and the thunderbolt comes down, right? But then in other fiction books, you have a very literal relationship with the gods, where the gods are even characters, or the gods are very clearly endowing or destroying or whatever. So going back to my example of my fantasy novel that opens on a holiday, at first, I'm going to tell you what I did in the first draft, and then I'll tell you what I did in the second draft that made it a lot better. In the first draft, I opened with the holiday, and the purpose of the holiday was that all the villagers got together, and once a year, the astronomers could predict when this beautiful, amazing performance would happen in the sky with the stars and with meteorites and all sorts of stuff. But it was more magical than it was scientific in this universe anyway. And so originally, all the villagers were just gathering for this beautiful holiday, and it was my opportunity to introduce the characters, to have a lot of culture, a lot of color, a lot of sound, and just really make it a rich experience for the reader. And I ended the chapter with, everything, the stars did their thing, and everybody was amazed, and then everyone kind of went home. And it was a very reflective, like at the end of the chapter, the main character sort of just like takes a deep breath and kind of, looks at the water and thinks about things or whatever. I read that to my writing group, and they said, you know, this is really beautiful writing, and the prose is very good. I like how you described what happened with the stars and everything. But it'd be more interesting, and there'd be more reason to keep reading if the stars didn't do what they were supposed to do. If everybody gathered, and for some reason, nothing happened. And so then you could foreshadow, is this an omen? You know, is this something bad going to happen in the future? Is this, you know, and there could be concern, and there could be, you know, and that way you can still have the holiday, but it's more interesting when something doesn't go according to plan. So that's a really good example, I think, of increasing your interest with holidays in fiction. What do you guys think about that? What's your response to that?
I like that idea.
Yeah.
And then the monsters came.
Right.
Yeah, I think the problem with the stories that we write is people want the things to happen. So most stories consist of, you know, chasing your main character up a tree and then throwing you know, obstacles at them, throwing apples at them, whatever. So just having a holiday and they're just enjoying it, either that's the end of your book,
right, okay. Big celebration,
the beginning of your book, and stuff happens, you know, after that. You know, things don't go as planned, as your writing group mentioned.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do want to mention, you know, there's a tendency to consider like modern implementations, if you will, of holidays. But if you really look back in history at holidays, a lot of them have some fairly supernatural origins. Halloween comes to mind, and various traditions from different cultures where, you know, the purpose of the holiday might be that there was a belief that, let's say, spirits and deities lived alongside you, and the holiday, you might have a feast to appease them, or to make the spirits feel like they're part of the community, or to seek their goodwill so that the next year would be good. There's even a tradition in some cultures that certain times of the year, the barrier between the current world and, say, the afterworld might be a little bit thin, and maybe you could talk to the dead at those times, et cetera, et cetera. So just looking back at some of the old-timey holidays, or the pagan holidays, or holidays from different cultures across the world, you can come across some things that are really useful in a fantasy or science fiction story.
Absolutely. You can definitely be inspired by what we already have.
The Jewish faith has, as we know, Hanukkah, which happens around the solstice, has Passover, or Passover, which happens around Easter. It happens around the equinox. And we have Purim, which happens around the solstice, the summer solstice. And then we have Rosh Hashanah, which happens around the equinox, the autumnal equinox. So there's a calendar that, or a faith, in fact, that's basing its whole religion more or less with this calendar that's based on the moon. So therefore things shift a lot, but more or less on the seasons of the year. And I think that is a very basic element of many basic cultures that would just say, the days are getting longer, therefore a holiday. The days are getting shorter, therefore a holiday. Yeah. The day is as long as night.
Struggling to think of a reason for a holiday in your fictional world, you might look to the seasons, because that seems to be something that is consistent throughout time and history. Harvest, as Marty said, you know, so that might be not interesting. You could make it interesting, but that's a common way to model your holiday calendar around. And I know that Dave had come up with his own holiday just in preparation for this episode. So maybe Dave is going to share that with us.
Well, okay, it's going to take a little bit of setup, but
okay, go for it. I'm excited.
So the premise is that while the rest of the world goes about its affairs unaware of their danger, the people of the mountains hold back the end of the world. You see, they live in the mountains alongside the Fae, and the Fae have long been fighting a battle to contain the monsters coming out of the Death Gate. Now they're few in numbers, and so their agreement with the humans allows them to take the firstborn of every family. Those young children are altered, turned into warriors, and they help the Fae hold back the monsters from the Death Gate. And so each year they celebrate the festival of the firstborn, where they celebrate the sacrifices of all those who fight to keep the Death Gate contained and to keep monsters from overrunning the world. And they celebrate holding off the end of the world for yet one more year. The problem is they're slowly losing the battle.
So each year, that holiday becomes less and less of a joyous celebration, basically.
Right. And the rest of the world is kind of unaware of the struggle that's going on and what they're being saved from. And the question is it real or fake? And you could write a pretty good story with that holiday as a background, either way.
That is pretty unique. Yes.
I think that.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, that's right. I don't want to talk over, sir.
No, okay. So I guess the last thing I wanted to ask was, were there any examples in books or movies that you enjoyed of holidays being used? The last one that I remember in sci-fi was, I think it was, the last Star Wars is called The Last Jedi, right? Not Return. Yeah.
That was the middle one of the new trilogy.
What's the last one of the new trilogy?
Does anybody care?
Hey.
Yeah, it's The Rise of Skywalker or something.
Okay, yeah.
Rise of Skywalker.
Sorry.
That one had a big festival happening on the planet.
Well, plus the Christmas special, Life Day. Christmas special has Life Day. Seen it.
That's the last example, and I enjoyed that example. They gave a little cultural background to what the people were selling. So have you guys seen any liked?
Well, I was going to say this, that I think in our modern culture, we have new holidays. We have, as we've just said, Star Wars, May the 5th. May the 5th be with you.
The 4th.
We have...
It's May the 4th, dude.
May the 4th. Well, yes. May the 4th. I was thinking of remember the 5th of September. I had Guy Fawkes in my mind. Sorry. But that's a whole other holiday that is May the 4th. Yes, I'm sorry about that. May the 4th be with you. I love to dress up as Grand Moff.
I think there's a category of holidays that we've missed. There's a fair number of holidays that are celebrating what I call world events. Pearl Harbor Day, the George Washington Day for the U.S. President's Day, whatever. Guy Fawkes Day in the UK celebrates the failure of Guy Fawkes to actually blow up Parliament, if you want an odd holiday.
That is very weird, yeah.
So you get a lot of national holidays, or you get holidays celebrating world events like battles, things like
Bastille, Jules Bastille.
Martin Luther King Day, celebrating the life of
the day the French stormed the Bastille.
These are not examples in books that you liked, Dave.
Communist Party Day, October 1st.
Well, I thought we should mention the category, since it's a fairly, if I look at my list of holidays for the year that I got to take with my company, more of them were national holidays than otherwise.
Yeah.
For books, I think the two most famous examples I can think of in books. One is a little story called The Star. It's a short story about Arthur C. Clarke. And you have to read it to understand the connection. It's one of the best short stories ever written in the science fiction field, I believe. And the other one is a book by Roger Zelazny. It was his last book before he died. It's called A Night in the Lonesome October. It's narrated by the familiar. And it turns out that at the end of October, every year, a whole bunch of people gather to decide to open or close something. And the whole book, there's a chapter per day. And so a lot of people will actually read the book in October, one day at a time, to get the full sense. And while they're never mentioned, all kinds of characters are gathering to make a decision about what happens on the last day of the month. From Sherlock Holmes to Jack the Ripper to all kinds of other folks, all because something is going to happen. It's a fascinating book, and it's one of my favorites. It's a very odd book, but it's a lot of fun.
That's a great example too for this episode.
A Night in the Lonesome October.
Anyone else?
And I mean, I will just one other one that I was going to mention before I screwed up the May the 4th day was Einstein's birthday, Pi Day. 3.14 as in the 14th day of the third month. That is a day that many people that are mathematical like to celebrate. And you could have a culture that celebrates the 14th day of the third month, because for them it would be Pi Day, or the 7th day of the second month to be Euler's number day. I mean, if they're a very mathematically oriented society, they might have weird festivals like that.
Wait, am I the only one that came up and developed my own holiday for this podcast?
I believe you are.
I thought that was the plan.
No, I mentioned mine from the book. I explained mine.
And I mentioned the twin dying day.
And Jeffrey mentioned his from the twin. And Marty said he never celebrates holidays because it goes against his religion, apparently.
Yeah.
I personally love holidays. I celebrate the hell out of them.
Kidding.
No, man. The holy. I'm sorry. I don't want to say it because I already messed up one thing, but the dude abides, and
Marty, do you have anything?
Every day is a holiday.
Any examples or anything?
I think we should add birthdays to the list.
Okay.
Because I think that holidays, based on people's birthdays, and tomorrow is my birthday.
Well, there's lots of books.
There's a lot of books that celebrate birthdays and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of them have as like a first chapter too, or something like the coming of age ritual. You know, today's my 17th birthday, and that means I will be whatever for the dystopian society that for some reason hates teenagers or whatever.
I mean,
or you have to get married. Yes.
You have to get married. Yes.
Harry Potter. Definitely. His birthday was very important to the plot.
Exactly. He turned 12, right?
Yeah. Well, being August 31st, whatever it was. Because of the prophecy, and it could have been Neville and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to spoil it. Go read the book.
That was a good addition there, Marty. All right, you guys, any final words on holidays before we wrap it up? Pun intended, wrap it up.
Yeah. I still thought
everyone won't see any of you guys before Christmas, so Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas
Happy Hanukkah.
to all, and to all a good morning.
Well, Merry Christmas. Yeah. But I still thought everybody was going to come up with a custom holiday for this podcast.
So David is the Christmas crier. There's always a Christmas crier.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and I'm the twin that never was.
All right, you guys. How about Holly Jolly Festive One?
Another finely structured holiday special.
Take care. Merry Christmas.